All right, welcome to another episode of The Brown Perspective. This is your host, R.O., and I'm here with my co host, Eduardo.
Bro, I didn't realize we had such a great president.
You know
I
what
think that the
yeah,
RNC opened up my eyes for a lot of the accomplishments.
you know what it felt like when I was watching it, when I was listening to Trump's speech? First of all, it was this one he was reading. This one was rehearsed. You could tell that he was
Hmm.
coached about everything. It wasn't just him going off the cuff, which I personally I find it more entertaining when he just gets to say whatever he wants because he doesn't hold back and sometimes he actually tells some truths.
Yeah.
But it was so boring to listen to him just read from the teleprompter. Um, but again, like you said, right, such a great president because he was outlining everything that he's done, everything that we're gonna do, and how amazing we are. And then, oh man, even the speakers before that, la novia is it Donnie Jr. The son,
Yes.
la novia. Oh man,
I think she's Cuban American, right?
oh
Was
she
it
reminded me of
Kimberly?
Sarah Palin. What's her name? Oh, what's her name?
I think it was isn't it Kimberly something? Or just go to the RNC. Oh yeah, Kimberly
Guilfoyle.
Guilfoyle,
Yeah, Guilfoyle.
was apparently the ex of our
Yeah,
current
Governor
governor here in
Newsom.
California, Newsom.
You know,
But
when I
yeah,
was
this was painful to watch.
oh, when I was listening to this, I couldn't help but get flashbacks of Sarah Palin,
Yes.
but cringy, even more cringy than Sarah Palin.
The
And
internet went crazy with her too.
have you ever seen the movie The Tropic Thunder when Robert Downey Jr. tells Ben Stiller that you never go full retard in a movie because you're not
Uh-huh.
gonna win? This is what this felt like to me, that the Republican Party has effectively gone full retard at this point. You
Wow.
can get up there and say whatever the hell you want. You can say whatever comes to your mind, and no matter how outlandish and ridiculous and cringy, it doesn't matter, man. It's fair game.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, and I think for some of the but to your point, I think they did make some points about some things about that was a fascinating thing. The whole thing about the mainstream media and the Democrats wanting to control what you think, what you do,
What's
whether
all
or not
fear?
you can have a
It's all
gun and all that stuff.
That's their message. It's all fear porn. Their message is the your cities are burning, people are fleeing to the suburbs because the Antifa anarchists and Black Lives Matter terrorists are looting because black people are inherently inferior. So the only thing they know how to do is to loot and riot, and they're burning down your cities, and so we need militias. You need to defend yourself, and the Democrats are not going to do it. The Republicans are the party of law and order, and you have to vote for us because we're going to restore law and order. And then they're portraying this reality to the Republican base that is so extreme just for the sake of scaring them so that they can vote. And again, this like Kimberly Guilfoyle, that was her message too, part of her message, because I know she said other things, but that's what I took from it.
Yeah, but it's you're right. I think part of the message was a lot of fear mongering, a lot of saying some, that the Democrats are gonna defund the police, well, specifically Joe Biden. And it's interesting because for me,
They don't say
it seemed,
defund though; they say dismantle. I mean,
yeah,
this is the fault of the Democrats too, though, because they shouldn't say defund. It's a reallocation
hmm,
of the funds and of the responsibility. You maybe you do have some calls to full out get rid of the police department and completely dismantle it, but the main core of it is to say no. Look, there's a lot of things that police officers do that they shouldn't be doing. Let's invest that money somewhere else so that cops don't have to be pulling people over for broken taillights, or they don't have to do these things that that men with guns don't have to
yeah,
do. But then the Republicans take that and they say, look, they want to destroy your police officers, destroy the police force, and so there's they want these cities to turn into areas where it's just open season on looting and rioting.
yeah, and yeah, and I think fear can be and has always been, particularly around race relations. a tremendous motivator, and I know that also I felt that last night they did a lot of appealing. You know, they featured the widow of the officer that was killed, and I think in Missouri it was, and then they brought the parents of a young lady that was killed by ISIS
Yeah,
during the
and
Obama administration. So they definitely also appealed to that sentimental,
yeah, like if you've been a
very
victim
extreme
also
cases.
of if you've been a victim of an immigrant, they're gonna pull you in here too. And then they brought in the couple that was supposedly defending their home from the looters and
Oh,
rioters that were going
oh
to
my God!
right. This is saying Brock Turner is. So I had heard his name and I
So he
thought,
didn't speak.
I'm sorry, what?
He didn't speak.
Yeah, because I had heard, and I don't know where it is that I heard it, so somewhere on YouTube, or maybe it was like some progressive bitching about this and just putting out the name. But even I thought, like, really, they're just going to associate themselves with someone that went to jail because he was convicted of sexual assault. But I
Mm,
see, this is how crazy the Republican Party is, that I didn't even think that was too far fetched.
mm.
It did raise like an alarm on me that I thought, okay, I should look into that because that's interesting. If they are going to get him, if they're going to actually go through and get him, it seemed conceivable that they would do it. But I felt like, okay, I need to check this. A good thing to check. So this is not true. So this is why it's important to always try to double check everything that you hear because not everything is true. How we
Yeah,
joke
there
went
was
around.
one lady that was supposed to talk but got told not to or didn't speak because of some anti-Semitic comments that she made. I think the day off or the day
Yeah.
before. So,
And look, actually, them having Brock Turner is not so far fetched because, I mean, look at all the sexual harassment claims against Trump. They don't seem to have a problem with that. So
hmm
they don't respect women. So that's why when I heard the name, I thought, hey, maybe,
well,
maybe
not
they're
if you
crazy
saw the
enough.
video. Trump has employed and has a lot of women in his administration,
Oh yeah, I'm sure that.
including his lovely daughter Ivanka Trump.
Yeah, right. I'm sure that that makes up for all of the sexual allegations against him.
But
So
that's the thing. So like it's so right now the reality is people got a chance to see both conventions. I think regardless of whether or not you agree with the campaign, I think they tried to do a good job at humanizing Trump and making him look likable and as a caring individual. Then they also were able to point to some of the successes or some of the things that they have been able to accomplish. And I think as an outsider, really emphasizing of some of the promises that he kept. And obviously, there can be arguments as to whether or not how significant some of the things that he did actually were, like the negotiations with Mexico and Canada around the new NAFTA, etc. But I think they did try to create a picture that for somebody who may not think about these issues or watch politics very closely, they could formulate an image of, what, like this guy is getting things done. He is going to do more in 2020. He's done more for African Americans than any president since Lincoln, which I
what?
thought was an interesting
Well, that's
statement for him to
Trump's
make.
hyperbole on anything he says, that it's tremendous and I've done more than any other president has ever done for any, and he'd say I've done more for Mexicans.
Historic.
Yeah, historic. He's very good at deflecting, and it makes it easy because they have all of their base scared of what the radical left is gonna do. They paint the radical left as being like outside the gate, just ready to come in and ravage this country and send it into total chaos and turn it into a socialist country. And in that sense, that it he is very effective at also at deflecting responsibility for a lot of things and pretending like the things that he did do work. For example, coronavirus will get blamed on China, and then he'll just focus on his response, his initial response where he wanted to ban travel from China, and then he'll focus on the things that he does say he did do, whether or not they're true or not, and he won't
Mhm.
focus on any of the negatives. He'll just highlight all the good things that he thinks he's done. and then he'll talk about the economy, which he says was going great before the coronavirus, and then he'll say that he wants to cut checks to people even when the Democrats didn't want to. So everything can be spun in a way that if you already managed to scare people into believing the reality, the manufactured reality that you want to feed them about the country, then if you already managed to do that, then it's not so hard to also just pretend and make it seem like you are doing things that are in their interest. When you're right, the truth couldn't be so far from the truth, because he paints Biden as this radical that has given into Bernie Sanders' demands, and that couldn't be.
I knew you would appreciate that.
And if you ever, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of friends that are Trump supporters, that are blind Trump supporters just because they buy into the fear mongering. But if I did, it would be so easy to disabuse them of all of these falsehoods that they have. Because you would just tell them, look, man, we're trying to get basic medical coverage for everyone. We're trying to oppose the wars. And we're trying to do things that are actually sane. There's nothing radical about giving people medical care. But again, these politicians, I don't know, man. Look, I think that the more that the politicians turn to fear mongering and scare tactics, it's a very short-sighted strategy, because
it works. That's the thing. It works to an extent.
Yeah, but it's very short-sighted in the sense that you're sowing the seeds for future unrest, because essentially what you're doing is you are stoking flames of hatred and fear, which stay with people. And if every election cycle they're doing this, then 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, eventually it's going to catch up to you if that's how you have your citizenry conditioned. And so I don't know what the effect of this is going to be, but as far as it's effective right now, it's a short-term gain for them. They may not care about what happens 20 years from now if they keep doing this, but it's a strategy that will have long-term negative consequences.
But something that's been done, some were argued since at least the Nixon administration.
But not this blatantly, though. This is. I mean, when did Nixon say that the radicals want to root and the Democrats are supporting getting rid of the police and rioting and looters, and then that Antifa is a terrorist organization that is getting a free reign, and then that the Democrats are not cracking down on it? Just
obviously not to that level, but I think the version of that was the law and order message that was relatable at that moment in time.
Yeah, well, look, the Democrats in '94, they were speaking that tough language of law and order. That's when Biden drafted the '94 crime bill, right? He was he says I am the architect of the '94 crime bill, and he's proud of it. And yeah, that was also scaremongering and trying to criminalize communities to pretend like over-policing was a solution when social services would have done a better job of addressing a lot of these issues. But at the level at which it is now with this guy and what they're doing, it only means that 4 years from now, if somebody wants to top Trump, or, well, assuming, right, that somebody wants to follow and emulate in Trump's footsteps, then they're going to go to demagoguery again, and they're going to have to bump it up a notch in terms of keeping this going and scaring the people. So it's just, I don't see it as a good long-term strategy, because you already saw what happened in Portland a few days ago, where the pro-Trump and the progressive and more of the liberal progressives protesting police brutality, and then the pro-Trump, some group that is supposed to be like protecting patriot rights. There was an altercation, and one of them was shot in Portland. And again, it's the people going at it, probably people that have more in common than they think they actually do. So anyway, this is what happens when you stoke the flames within the population. And then you also had in Wisconsin with the rioting that happened as a result of the other black person being killed, or being shot in the back in front of his 3 kids who were in the car.
Yeah, seven
And
times.
I'm sorry.
Jacob Blake.
Yeah.
Shot seven
Shot seven
times.
times in front of his kids, and then you had the rioting and the looting and the protests, and then you had the 17-year-old who felt that he needed to be out there to protect private property, and he ended up shooting 1 or 2 of the protesters, and now he's
Well, killing two, and I think the other one is still in critical condition. Or
right, because these cities are burning down, and you need to get out there and protect private property
mm-hmm.
from these looters. And again, the characterization of it, that the protesters, all the protesters are looting, that all that they want to do is just an excuse to loot and riot, where the truth is always more nuanced. The truth is, you have a ton of protesters that are protesting against police brutality, and inevitably you have people, opportunists, that do exploit that and take advantage of it, and there's going to be rioting and looting. But
mm-hmm.
the characterization that they're all like that, it just further escalates the level of fear and anxiety, in on this other side that feels like that again, the Democratic Party and the progressives are coming after them. Where I'm here, I am sitting as a progressive and thinking, man, this just takes us one more level away from actually talking about stuff that really helps people, like healthcare.
Yeah, it does. And I think that, I mean, part of it is part of the plan, but in some ways, the issues with healthcare are what has led to, I think, the current moment of the inequalities, the amount of death in communities of color, bankruptcies, as we were talking about last week. So yeah, a lot of factors that add up to what's going on right now. But yeah, it's sad because it definitely feels like it creates this enemy attitude between people that love this country, and maybe we have different visions of for what we want to see, but we're still patriotic. We still want the best for ourselves and for our families, and that so it's not about taking away people's guns and about being jealous about people who do well, but it's just about spreading the wealth and taking care of those who we can need to be taken care of. Because I think the other picture is we can have a society where we are all prospering, where we are all healthy, and that ultimately is better for all of us. But unfortunately, there's a dynamic of, if they have it, I won't be able to have or keep mine.
And speaking of healthcare, what did you make of? I don't know if you heard Trump's speech at the RNC, but he did say that he was going to protect people's healthcare, and he did he did say that he was going to protect so that people with pre-existing conditions could keep their healthcare, which is we're right to the extent that what he's saying, he actually means it, or if it's just another talking point. But you would never hear Republicans saying something like that.
That's true, but the reality is that his administration is challenging Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, which would probably, if the courts side with his administration, I think at least 10 to 20 million people will lose their health care, and I don't believe I've seen any plan from the Republicans to replace it in a way that would make a significant difference.
Right. So that goes into the essentially, they at this point the Republicans will just say anything and leave it up to people to fact check them. But I don't even know why people bother fact checking Trump. It's like, we know most politicians will overpromise, but at least with some other politicians, you have a sense for what they do represent and what they actually do believe in and will try to fight for to some degree. But with Trump, I mean, let's see, fact checked. What happens if you fact check Trump's Trump?
I think somebody did do. I want to say it might have been CNN who had to do at least 21 things that they.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think they did do some fact checks, but maybe I don't know. NPR could be the best, one of the better.
Yeah, well, they were fact checking him live as he was saying it, and then the segment would cut in, and then they would fact check what he had just said. And so here they're fact checking Melania Trump said about her breast campaign speech. So this was fact checking him about the coronavirus pandemic and the economy. In a new term as president, we will again build the greatest economy in history, quickly returning to full employment, soaring incomes, and, and record prosperity. Is
Hey, that sounds pretty good for somebody who's desperate right now.
is
I would vote
yeah.
for that.
Like, is there a need to fact check this? I mean, what exactly do you need to fact check about this? This statement is so vague that to be completely meaningless. Like anyone can say this.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
gonna
for
build the
his base is
greatest.
gonna, for his base that's feeling the pain right now is gonna sound inspirational and aspirational.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, like you said earlier, it's so much easier to scare people, to get a reaction out of them, than to try to explain to them the complexities of actually running a functioning society with how to pay for healthcare, how to pay for education, the benefits of doing that, long-term benefits. It's just so much easier to scare people and then give them these like empty meaningless statements that we have the greatest economies, empty platitudes about America being the greatest country in the world, exceptionalism, greatest economy, and then vague promises like, I mean, full employment. There's no such thing as ever getting full employment. Well, maybe based on how they define it. If they define full employment as having the unemployment rate below a certain percentage, then
Yeah,
even again,
I
that's
think
more of
that's
a
it.
technicality, the way they define it. Soaring incomes. I mean,
But hey,
the wealth gap has increased since the mid '70s, and incomes have been stagnant compared to company profits and to inflation. There's no
mhm.
way this guy's gonna change soaring incomes and record prosperity. And they felt that they needed to check this. What did they say? Before the coronavirus pandemic, the U.S. unemployment rate was just 3.5, as low as it had been in half a century, but economic growth fell short of what President Trump and his advisors promised. The economy grew 2.2% last year, roughly on par with the pace over the past decade. So he did no different or even no better than what Obama did, right? Yet he has the
Yeah,
greatest economy ever. What's the other fact check that they did?
which was built by a lot of the Obama administration policies too. So he seems to forget that before he came to power, there was a president and administration that was in power for 8 years who also did a lot.
Yeah, he also promised a vaccine before the end of the year, or maybe even sooner.
Yeah, maybe we are gonna get it from Russia after all. And that was funny when he talked about, oh, I have very good information that the Chinese want Biden to win,
Oh
and
yeah,
forgets to mention that I guess the Russian obviously have their lot with him.
yeah, I know. Yeah, so the Democrats screamed that it's the Russians that want to Trump to win, and now Trump is saying that it's the Chinese that want Biden to win. Entonces,
Yeah,
los pinches Democrats, ¿para qué empiezan? ¿Para qué empiezan con sus pendejadas de que it was the Russians that caused Hillary to lose? And then you start with that nonsense, and then Trump is just gonna pick it up and take it up and escalate on that and use it against them.
yeah.
Give me 1 second. This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our shared destiny. Yeah, again, the word socialism and the way that they try to describe socialism, not explaining that democratic socialism that is the type of democratic socialism that Bernie Sanders advocates for is totally different than the type of socialism that you would see in a country like Venezuela. But again, they
Hmm.
don't care about that. They don't care about nuance. They just care about scaring people.
Yeah. But listen, I think that the greatest antidote to this stuff is somebody, obviously, education and being able to have everybody have an education and be involved and be able to understand these policy issues, these political issues. So that's one thing, and I think one way that people can do to become more civically engaged, just to read and further study these issues if you haven't had a chance to study it in a formal way. And I think for the most part, I think people have a sense of those big issues. But on the other hand, there's also people who are college educated, prosperous, who are believing a lot of what the speech had to say, or that feel that, what, like, he still would do a better, giving him eight 4 more years would be better than going with Joe Biden for whatever the reason is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The wall will soon be complete. 4 years ago, Donald Trump promised that Mexico would pay for the wall he wanted to build along the U.S.-Mexico border. Since then, the administration says 275 miles of that wall have been built. Mexico has not paid a penny. While Congress has authorized some spending for the project, most of the money for wall construction has been redirected from the military at the president's insistence. Trump's former political strategist Steve Bannon participated in a private effort to raise money for a border wall. Last week, Bannon and 3 others were indicted on charges that they siphoned hundreds of thousands of dollars each from the wall fund for their own personal use. Bannon has pleaded not guilty. Yeah, so
Very rich.
And you notice that he didn't say anything about Mexico paying for the wall because, as it says there, Mexico has not paid a single penny. Mm-hmm. He does say he wants to lower the cost of your prescription drugs. Again, just as empty promises because there's just no, even the Democrats wouldn't be able to do this, let alone Trump. He hasn't even done anything to try to help people. And if he wanted to really help people, he would actually talk about something more significant than just giving them like, yeah, we're going to lower your cost. And we passed it a long way for
the right to try. So yeah, so then he is able to hang his hat on the right to try bill that he did pass, which is basically just giving people the opportunity to well, I think it explains it right there, just to be able to get access to certain experimental treatment, and if they haven't had a chance to find a treatment option that works to help with their condition.
The most talked about one would tie certain drug prices to the less expensive prices in other countries, but this pertains to only Medicare Part B and others, and the order hasn't been implemented, right? So this order has not been implemented. Instead, Trump said he'd give pharmaceutical executives time to come up with an alternative plan. If there was no deal by a deadline, which came and went later this week, he'd implement an executive order. There's no sign yet that the order has been implemented. Trump signed into law the Right to Act in 2018, which allows patients with life-threatening diseases or conditions and who have already exhausted all approved treatment options to access certain experimental treatments still undergoing Food and Drug Administration review. Yeah, but look, even this is targeting a very, very small fraction of the American population.
Yeah.
Because this is talking already about patients with life-threatening diseases. People need coverage. Regular people need coverage so that they don't go bankrupt when they get cancer or they get diabetes or something else that requires constant medical treatment, physical therapy. And even people that have private insurance a lot of times end up going bankrupt because they can't pay. They can't pay the bills because the insurance will only pay so much. You have the co-payment, the deductible, and then insurance, usually it caps at a certain amount that they're going to pay. And then people have to pay out of pocket and they can't pay, so then they go bankrupt. So again, right, so he's not going to do anything on that. Lower the cost. The politicians do this a lot, where they'll say something like, we're going to lower the cost, but then the policy will only affect a very small percentage of the population. Like, again, here, those with life-threatening diseases. And technically it's correct. Like, he didn't lie, but he omitted a lot here, because he didn't say up here that he would try to lower the cost for 0.1% of the population, something like that. He'll just say this, but then the actual executive order or whatever he tries to do may only affect a very small percentage of the population. Yet he still gets to say that he lowered the cost, because technically it's correct, but he only lowered it for a very small percentage of people. If he does do that, right? Even if he does achieve something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have approved more than 300 federal judges, criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones. I mean, how is he going to do that if he's the one that's saying that Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all these protesters are rioters and looters?
Yeah, there were a lot of times where, he talks about, getting America out of unnecessary wars, and then obviously doubling down on the defense spending. Talks about, reforming the justice system and getting people out of jail, but then also promising to be tough on crime and all those things. So oftentimes it felt like they were talking about both sides of their mouths.
Well, when it comes to foreign wars, though, you have to at least admit that every time he has advocated for intervention or bombing Syria or escalating, he's gotten the support from the Democrats. So in that sense, there's not much difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. If anything, Trump did try to he did try to pull out of or reduce the presence in Iraq and pull out of Afghanistan, and he was blocked. He was blocked from doing that. And so that tells you that there's an interest that's entrenched there that has both the Democrats and the Republicans, that it's essentially holding both of them hostage. Neither party can really do much. And even if Trump did, like that was one of his promises, right? That he was going to end these like endless wars, and then he did try, at least with Afghanistan, to pull out of Afghanistan. And again, he struggled with that. He struggled from both parties. And then when he approves more military funding, when he approves of these things, or when he proposes to increase the military budget or a military budget, he gets approval from both parties. Remember when he bombed Syria, and you had the mainstream media, MSNBC, applauding the president and saying that, oh, now I feel like President Trump has become presidential today. I'm really proud to call him a president. This is what the so-called liberals were saying when it came to his act of bombing another country. Anyway, let's do this last one. I have done more for the African American community than any president since Abraham Lincoln.
I don't think he took history class.
Oh, fuck, this guy is... Dude, if you can just lie like this and nobody checks you, fuck, dude. Imagine if you could just go around society lying like this and face no consequences of it. And the first thing you learn as a little kid is if you lie like this, there's consequences. And if you talk like this, there's consequences. Either your parents do something to you or you get your ass kicked in the playground by somebody that calls your bluffs. And come on, this is fucking stupid to say something like this. Like if...
Well, hey, some of his folks who don't know, who have seen what he talked about, because I know there was that African American lady that he pardoned, and some of the bills, because he did enact a measure that I guess did do some good in terms of reforming the justice system.
The criminal
but
justice
still,
system.
If you just see that, then you're like, okay, yeah, I trust him. He cannot lie to me.
Yeah, I mean, he took some steps maybe to help in certain areas. But to say that I have done more for the African American community than any president since Abraham Lincoln, and see, this is the problem when you have rich, wealthy people who are surrounded by sycophants and people that are too afraid to check them. It, like not the media, like not NPR that's gonna check him on this, but the people around him.
You mean internally? Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't hang out with your buddies. I mean, how long are you going to hang out with someone that's going to lie like this and use hyperbole and over-exaggerate? How long do you have to hang out with that guy before you call him out as a friend or before you start hanging out with that person? Like, under no...
Is he the president of the United States?
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, in normal, everyday interaction, this isn't a normal type of relationship that you would have with anyone where you can just let them say or do all these things. But because he's the president, because he has power, because people want him to be in power, or because there's consequences of pushing back on this, nobody tells him anything. And as a result of this, you end up with this crazy... this is no longer like reality TV. This is like reality... What's the word?
Fake TV.
Well, it's like real world imitating TV now. The real world imitating reality TV, and it's just the lunacy of this, that he can say something like this, and that some people, or that the significant portion of the population actually takes this with a straight face, that he
Or
is
that he
not
believes it.
ridiculed and mocked out of a political office because of saying something as dumb and vacuous as this. This is just
There you go. That's 2020 for you. The 2020 presidential campaign, ladies and gentlemen.
summed up in one sentence here.
Yep.
Cool. Any
That'll be a cool T-shirt
yeah,
to print.
yeah, you could fit all this in, maybe in the front and the back. Oh man, this is so funny. All right, any closing words before we wrap up?
Well, as it relates to this conversation, I think whoever you're voting for, however you're going to vote, whether you're going to vote by mail, whether you're going to vote in person, just make sure you vote. Please do it. Don't care if you vote Republican, Independent, Democratic, whoever it is that you vote, just vote. Don't vote if you don't. If you vote for the races and the ballot initiatives for the issues that you care about, and if you don't want to complete the rest of the ballot, that's fine. But just vote. Vote. Please do so. Please update your registration, your voter registration, and make sure that you tell the people to vote, because it is an important thing that we can do to express and also learn more about the type of society that we want to have